there's a lot of different facets to the ramifications of, the Dobbs decision and effectively overturning Roe. But I guess maybe something that surprised you or something that's kind of an undercovered story, or are you feeling more hopeful because of just how aware and just how angry, let's say, like red state women are? But tell me.
That is such a tricky question, because the question is like, what am I not upset about? What am I
Yeah.
not unaware of? I think seeing the ways that people, even places that are a little more red, have always, I mean, at this point, every single time abortion ends up on the ballot, even in places like Kansas, people step in and say, wait, we can't completely outlaw, right? We can't take it out of our Constitution. So knowing that has been nice to see. I've been working at AAF for quite some time, not a very long time, but quite some time, over like 8 years, and
Yeah.
seeing the sea change from people being unwilling or uncomfortable to say abortion to people like being more willing or more excited to say abortion and talk about their abortion stories. I think that is something that has been, oh, you asked about the bad. That is something that's been good that's come out of the Dobbs decision. The bad is so innumerable, right? Like from the day of the Dobbs decision, and actually even before, when Texas instituted SB 8, the suffering that people have had to endure, not just people who wanted to end pregnancies, but people who wanted pregnancies and realized that for whatever reason, their pregnancy is not viable or not going to work for them. Knowing we hear a fraction of the stories in the
Yes.
news of the suffering that people are enduring in states that have restricted abortion, but what we don't hear is probably a whole iceberg worth. And so when I just think about the level of suffering that is preventable, right? It's not like doctors don't know how to do these positions. It's not like the technology doesn't exist. It's like doctors know exactly what to do, and it is legislators, it is politicians that are keeping them from giving people the relief that they need. That is overall, I think, what hurts me the most.
Yes. It is the most government in your business, the most violation of privacy, the most bureaucratic way
And
of
the
doing
most,
health.
my God knows best, right? This is all pushed by a narrow understanding of one particular religion, right? There's not other faiths that are out here saying like, oh yeah, Jewish people, we don't do this. Muslim people, we
Right.
don't do this. Atheists,
Right.
we don't do this. It's a narrow sect of Christians, not even
Christian
all.
nationalists.
Christian nationalists that are saying that the way that we understand our religious text is the way that everybody needs to live, right? It's not like we have a consensus. We actually know that abortion is broadly popular in this country. It's always been broadly popular in this country. It's about like 60-70% of people believe that abortion should be allowed to people at most times. So, and that's across the country, right? What we have is a problem of a specific group of people who are very empowered and have further cemented their power with gerrymandering that leads to us all having to live with a minority opinion.
Yes. Look at Alabama, right? Like, I think that's case in point. There's these, just like, these state legislatures are completely overrun with Republicans, and to say nothing of their courts. But I think the cruelty is a layer I wasn't expecting, but maybe should have been.
You should have been.
Right? Yeah. Like, and I think the cruelty for people who just want reproductive care, right? And they are forced to watch their children die in their arms because they're forced to have a non-viable pregnancy and carry that to term.
Bleed out in the parking lot, right?
Or bleed out in
because
the parking lot.
can't get the care that they need, and the care that doctors are fully equipped to give, they're just not allowed to.
Yeah.
Also, the cruelty is not new, right? We are talking about the cruelty post-Dobbs. Before Dobbs in Alabama, you had a 48-hour waiting period. There are all these carve-outs so that you can't pay for it in ways that make it accessible to people who are not wealthy. They had a judicial bypass, and they would appoint lawyers to represent the fetus with children who were pregnant.
Oh my God.
So like that's Alabama, right? In like 2014, when Roe was very much the law of the land. The cruelty is not new. What we're seeing is the cruelty expanded and not defying constitutional norms.
Right. But they're all expanding their, like, state school lunch programs, Moji. So we know they actually do. Oh, wait, no. They've completely
You're talking about
rejected.
Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly. One state. Let's turn to the election, because we know, like, women in red states are mad as hell. Republicans are not really running on their so-called success in stopping people from exercising their free will when it comes to abortion. Like, what do you make politically of how Republicans are using this? And also the fact that, like, Donald Trump behind the scenes is saying he supports, what is it, a 16-week federal ban? But he's not campaigning on that. He's not openly saying that. So what do you make of them kind of running from their record, and do you think it's going to screw them in elections?
So they're counting on people not remembering the things that they've said, or they're counting on people not paying attention, or they're counting on people not having abortion be their primary issue, which
Right.
it is for me personally. It's not just red state people, right? Like, there's no safe states in this country. With a conservative or Republican president, we could have a national ban. Truthfully, with the Miffy ruling that's coming up, we could have some version of national ban on Miffy by the end of this year, right? By the middle of this year. So there are no safe states. And I think that Republicans have realized, again, that their policies are broadly unpopular. And in the local level, they're counting on the gerrymandering, right? When you're really gerrymandered, it almost doesn't matter if most people disagree with your policies. You just need to appeal to the base that you gerrymander to focus on. On the national level, I'm so worried, Francesca.
Yeah.
Like, I am so worried, because I think that people, I watch and mostly listen. I listen to podcasts. I read the news all the time. This is what we do at AF. I am fully dialed in on, like, what's happening in the world, but I think a lot of people aren't really paying attention, aren't really thinking through the practical ramifications of what could happen in a Republican presidency.
Yeah.
Obviously, Biden's also not going to save us. Like, he's had almost 2 years to give us some relief from the Dobbs decision, and it seems like it's not that important. I don't know if that's the holy grail for what will push his unpopularity onto us or what, but
I mean, it seems like Biden
I feel like
only
I'm just
knows how to
complaining.
run. No. I think it's good. I mean, I think it is fair to say that because it had been such established law, and I think people that weren't mired in or who weren't affected by the ways that Roe had been chipped away at for, years and years before the actual Dobbs decision came down, that folks were kind of largely tuned out for it. And I would argue, I mean, even some of the mainstream, reproductive rights, abortion rights organizations were not doing, I guess, a good enough job at really lobbying and or making sure they had, like, supportive base that was aware, blah, blah, blah. But you're right that, Trump will pass a federal ban.
It's also our media, though, because I feel like every time abortion wins in the ballot, the media is like, oh my gosh, people still care about this?
Right. You're like, every damn day. We're like,
every damn day.
At people's lives all the time.
I've seen a lot of success in America, though, in places that you would otherwise think were really red, having some elections, like in Kentucky, for example, where abortion was a driving factor. Like, it actually was getting people out to the polls.
Absolutely.
So maybe, would you say that there's like maybe an unassumed amount of anger that the Republicans are miscalculating in that regard? Because, like, the midterms were supposed to be the red wave and all that kind of stuff, right? But it seemed like what a big driving factor was in a lot of different areas seemed to be just the loss of bodily autonomy. Really does galvanize people.
It does. And I think abortion is a winning issue. I absolutely do believe that. I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, Lance. I also feel like sometimes if you are not either those of us who consume media news voraciously, or a person who is imminently dealing with the fallout of these bans, sometimes people just forget
Right.
that they have the power to impact them in other ways. Or sometimes people forget that like abortion is an economic issue, right? So they're like, I'm worried about the economy. And it's like, well, if you're forced to have children that you're unable to support, that's an economic issue. If you're
Yes.
forced to pay for additional healthcare because the basic abortion healthcare that could have helped you in your crisis moment is out of reach because of politicians, that's an economic issue. And so
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times abortion is sort of divorced, and this happens even in medicine, from being just a part of a wholesale healthy electorate. And this is a media problem. This is a messaging problem. This is as much an individual problem as it is the Democratic Party. And I think they're trying. But also, I think for the last couple decades, Republicans have been running on pro-life, pro-life, pro-life. And Democrats have not at all in any point been like pro-choice, pro-abortion, pro-reproductive rights. And so I think that in the last 2 years, there's been a forcing to relearn how to flex that muscle. And like
But with
anything
Democrats
else,
like these,
yes.
I mean, we have Nancy Pelosi, who, I mean, she's not the speaker anymore, but, up until in 2016, she was still like, I think you can be a Democrat and be, against choice. And you're like, oh, excuse me. No.
I'm sorry. Our current Democratic frontrunner has recently said something to the tune of abortion on demand in a weird way, like in the last few weeks.
He was giving a speech, I think, at a Catholic assembly or something like that.
Oh,
he was
boy.
talking about how like abortion should be rare.
that
legal
line.
and rare.
That old Clinton line.
Stigmatizing trope.
Yeah.
So I think that progressives, Democrats don't know how to use this, don't know how to talk about it. And we're trying because people are mad and people are seeing the terrible outcome from these abortion bans. But there's much more to be said and there's so much more to be done.
Can you tell me?
It as, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what about reframing it as forced birth? As in, like, the other side is trying to force women to give birth, or in this case, in Alabama, not be able to give birth against their will. Right, because that's essentially what's being done.
Yes, and please tell that to your local politicians.
and actually, I've been really, because forced birth is something that like Abortion AF introduced me to, like that term, including the term antes, including the term MIFI, which now I'm using all the time.
Yes,
but it's short for mifepristone, right?
Which is the first drug in the abortion pill regimen,
right? And then is it miso? Or are we going to shorten?
It is. It's Miffy and Miso. Absolutely. When I'm wearing my abortion necklace, but I was going to wear my Miffy and Miso necklace as well. Yes,
very cute. I love that. If I am forced birthing twins, I will name them
Miffy and Miso. Those are excellent names. I love it. Miffy and Miso Fiorentini.
Yeah. Miffy Fiorentini. That actually really works. Scary. But what can what should the Biden administration or the Biden campaign be saying, right? They are trying to rally folks around them around abortion rights as if like they're their last holdout. What?
What should the Biden be? I have a list.
Yeah, please. Because basically they're saying, and this is what happens is the Republicans lower the bar and then Democrats say, we would never lower that bar. And you're like, cool, except the bar is here. It is it is centimeters above where you say you don't want to lower it to. Like, how about raising the bar? How about making everything better? And they don't seem to have a plan, but maybe I haven't been following it as much. Is Biden talking about getting rid of the filibuster finally so we can, codify Roe v. Wade if there is a Democratic Senate going, forward?
Francesca, I really wish I had the answer to that question, but I spend so much time looking at the minutia of what's going on in states that I am not paying attention to the bumbling of that person just yet. Don't get me wrong. Like I skimmed Project 2025 and I have no doubt what we can't have. But I think right now, like I have no words, right? Like say abortion, talk to people who have boots on the ground, who are out here. There is while I talked about how like Democratic politicians maybe don't have the words or the language. There are activists who have been on the ground, including my org, but lots of other orgs as well, that have been on the ground for decades, who have a wealth of experience. And you know what? No one's saying they're doing. Being invited to talk in spaces to really help talk about how to address this.
Yes. Yes, listening to them, listening to, like, demystifying it, stop making it such a weird, like, yeah, like a bad word. And I think that's something Abortion AF has done really well. And I think the other thing you guys always talk about is supporting all pregnancy outcomes.
Yes.
And how clear is it that abortion is healthcare and abortion is reproductive care than what we're seeing now, where people who want to be parents are, again, like you mentioned, bleeding out in their cars because they're not allowed to get a D&E or a DNC to safely not be pregnant anymore. And it's like, these are family values. Abortion values are family values. 60% of people who get abortions are already parents.
Or go on to be parents, right? Like it's just a step in one's reproductive journey, right? And we don't all take the same steps in our reproductive journeys, but abortion is one of those steps that is not exotic. It's something that is extremely common in one's reproductive journey. And it doesn't mean that you don't have kids. It doesn't mean you won't have kids. It just means that at this moment, that is not the right choice for a person. And that should be honored at any time by anyone who needs it or wants it.
Yes. And so you have okay, let's say Biden reelected narrowly, if he makes it to November. What's the plan? Like, what do you, like, you're an advisor. What the hell?
Oh, I'm an advisor?
Yeah, what do we do?
Oh my gosh. Well, step one, we are going to pillage some things from Project 2025 and figure out what these mechanisms they were going to use to outlaw abortion and use it to actually really strengthen things. We're definitely going to get Comstock off the books because Comstock is the latest Trojan horse that
what is that?
Comstock is an act from 1864, I believe. Comstock was a postman, and essentially the Comstock Act is what is basically makes it illegal to send lewd items through the mail. And it is something that has been ignored for some time. But right now, anti-abortion activists are trying to use it to say, well, abortion pills cannot be sent through the mails, or items used for surgical abortions cannot be sent through the mail, right? Because they're not all manufactured in the states that people can have access to abortion. But if you say that those can't be mailed, how do you get them to other states? And actually, in the Miffy case that is before the Supreme Court right now, I was recently asked to look at the Comstock Act and use it to nullify the usage of the abortion pill. And in the last few years, the abortion pill has become something
sent like a dildo in 1863. You know what I'm saying? Like what happened? Like, how was it?
I don't know, but Comstock collected them and brought them to the state house to say, we can't send these. That is actually what he did.
You could put that in your butt. You could put that in your butt.
In fact, what he did, he collected dildos that were sent in the mail. And he said,
oh my God.
Don't put this in your butt, and don't let people mail it to places to put it in your butt. So also anyone who's like bought a vibrator offline apparently is violating the Comstock Act.
Jesus. I mean, they would love that.
This book again, this rule again is over a century old. There have been so many opportunities where Democrats have been in power where they could have just removed it from the books and no one got to it. So I think that there are a lot of these sort of zombie laws, zombie rules. And as people saw the Dobbs decision coming years before, progressive states started removing zombie abortion laws from their states. Illinois, New York, a lot of states just said, oh my goodness, Roe v. Wade happened and it just nullified this abortion law. Let's get rid of it so that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, we don't automatically have this law
that you have
no
to be married in order, or something like this, or or
your husband has to sign on, or just that it's illegal. And so there are a lot of things like that exist in our federal statutes. And so if I was in any power in our progressive government that doesn't exist, then I would absolutely be like, let's comb through these and not let these weapons just lie in wait.
Speaking of weapons, how were dildos made in the 1860s?
I love that you think I'm a dildo historian, and that's fantastic for me. And I will work on that for the next time I'm on this show. I will bring a detailed account of how dildos are made. I'm assuming wood. I don't know. Did they have plastic?
A lot of splinters.
Did it vibrate? Was it just like a bunch of crickets in a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Crickets in a hollowed out. I love that. They're just popping around.
Yeah. Grasshoppers in a bag. I don't know. I don't know.
Comstock, more like Comstock. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
But
That's, yeah, I'm a Canadian. Any
So happy I
final
asked.
thoughts, Moji, before we let you go?
Final thoughts. Everybody vote always. Do what you can to support undoing any sort of gerrymandering in your space, because a lot of times I just want to say that the reason that Dobbs happened, and the reason that any law really gets to the Supreme Court is because one state decides to pass something that is unconstitutional, and then it winds its way through the court, and then that becomes law of the land. So one of the things that we need to be worried about in something like this Alabama case is that the Alabama deciding that extrauterine embryos are children, is that an appeal could happen. It could run through our very conservative judiciary and make it to the Supreme Court. And then all of a sudden, nationwide, embryos are children. And so we need to make sure that these things are stopped at the local level, or just don't even exist at the local level. And so if you're not a voter, vote in your local elections, because that's a lot of what matters. And if you can do anything to help with redistricting or just undoing gerrymandering in any space you're in, do that. That's my final word on what we can do to move change anywhere.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that we can the floor of getting involved is something like that.
Lastly, I just want to ask, do you feel like people are, aafront.com.org,
We're an org.
I apologize. But I just want to, do you feel like funding is drying up, or do you feel like it's still there for abortion rights organizations? And is that, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it suffering a broader progressive dry spell around funding?
I think that when the Dobbs decision happened, everyone, and this is really just speaking more on individuals, everyone was mad and fired up and throwing their money at abortion rights. And I think some of that is still happening, but I think it doesn't have the passion that it did. I think that also we have fatigue at things, right? Like, we haven't solved this problem yet.
No. And I mean, I think the other thing is, like, we knew this was going to happen. As soon as Trump was elected, we knew this was going to happen. Look, the Women's March was about this. Like, I don't care what anyone says. It wasn't about Trump. It was about bodily autonomy. It was about reproductive rights. It was.